All right, everybody. I hope everybody's having a good week. My name is Mr. Belser, and I'm going to talk about the first battles of the American Revolution. As you can see, it involved lightsabers, and this is an actual historical document, an actual historical picture, and it's just amazing. They didn't have photography back then, but they had lightsabers. And there, of course, is the Death Star in the back. But, of course, these are the first battles of the American Revolution. That really didn't happen, by the way. That's from a movie called Star Wars. I'm sure you all are familiar with that. We looked at the causes of the American Revolution earlier, or we should have if we're on schedule. The colonies were completely outraged at taxes. I mean, if you look at this was the major issue that caused so much consternation, there's a good word for you, at the British. So, the representatives in the colonies met to try to deal with this issue, to try to help return the British back to where they were, in which, the colonies weren't paying these taxes. And again, they thought they were being oppressed. So they met in Philadelphia, tried to figure out what to do about this. Every colony except one sent representatives. I forget which colony that was. I want to say it was maybe Georgia, but I'm not sure. But George Washington, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Patrick Henry, they were there. These are, people who we revere today. The people who, we refer to as patriots. Americans refer to as patriots. Our founding fathers, what have you. These are people on coins, money. We always quote Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. Samuel Adams, there is beer named after him. John Adams was a poor president, but nonetheless a very important founding father, and also had an HBO miniseries made about him. So, all very important people, two future presidents of the United States. Got to get this camera right. And what did they want? They just wanted to return to life as it was before the taxes. They just wanted to, live their lives as it was. Let's go back to the way things used to be. We were enjoying life. Leave us alone. We'll be fine. And the British said no. And they were increasingly threatened by the colonists. The fact that they were having the Continental Congress meet and decide what to do. The fact that there was more rioting going on throughout the colonies over these taxes. The fact that tax collectors were being tarred and feathered on a regular basis. They considered these individuals who were, sort of conspiring or trying to figure out what to do about the taxes. They considered them traitors to the British Crown. So they sent these soldiers to these little towns in Massachusetts. I've actually been here, Lexington and Concord, to capture Samuel Adams and John Hancock, again, considering them traitors to the crown. Paul Revere and William Dawes. There was a poem written about Paul Revere called The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. That's why he's a little bit more remembered than William Dawes for this alerting the people of Boston that the British were coming. Paul Revere and William Dawes, they're riding throughout the town of Boston and, on the way to Lexington shouting, "The British are coming! The British are coming!" And there was also a signal, to alert the Minutemen, the people who were supposed to come up from Boston and fight the British, to how they would be arriving. It was, known in the poem as one if by land, two if by sea. In the Old North Church in Boston, if there were two lanterns, lighted and held up in the window or hung up in the window, they were coming by sea. If there was only one lit up in the window, they would be coming by land. By sea, not necessarily by sea, but by river. The British were supposedly going to come down the Charles River, according to Paul Revere. So it was, in fact, that the British did come by sea. the Minutemen were ready. I mean, Paul Revere and William Dawes alerted all the people that the British were coming. They had the signal by sea, and a skirmish ensued at Lexington, Massachusetts. And this is pre-Declaration of Independence. This is 1 year, roughly, before the Declaration of Independence. There was this skirmish at Lexington, Massachusetts, and Concord, Massachusetts, in which the American Minutemen forced the British to retreat, which was a huge victory of morale. I mean, this basically showed that this ragtag group of Americans could stand with the British Empire and possibly would have a chance in a revolution that really wasn't organized as of yet. As of 1775, when battles of Lexington and Concord occurred, this was a very disorganized, very loose movement. I mean, they really hadn't figured out what they were doing quite yet. But the fighting would continue. The British and the colonists would continue to fight each other through, a few battles through April 1775, in which that was Lexington and Concord, through July 1776, and that was when, of course, the United States declared independence. So these are skirmishes. This is violence before independence. I mean, we really kind of consider 1775 when, these first battles occurred, the beginning of the American Revolution. And the Americans experienced tremendous success, and they built on that success. Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold, who would soon turn against the United States. Basically being labeled a traitor. Now, if you stab somebody in the back, you are known as a Benedict Arnold. They took forts in New York, and so they were very successful in the North, and they seized British gunpowder and weaponry, another sort of boon to the American effort, and they used these weapons to attack the British in Boston, and that was where the Battle of Bunker Hill occurred. Bunker Hill was then known as Breed's Hill, but we know the battle now as the Battle of Bunker Hill. The colonists were on top of this hill. The British launched a frontal attack up this hill, and the American colonists could easily shoot down at the British while they were charging up the hill. Kind of reminiscent of, some incidents in the Civil War, which of course we'll come to later. Never a very good idea to charge up the hill with a bunch of guys on top of the hill with guns. Nonetheless, and this is kind of what it looked like, British running up the hill, and they're getting picked off one by one. Nonetheless, they would eventually fight long enough to take the hill because the American gunpowder ran out. And when you don't have gunpowder, you can't shoot guns. So, the Americans retreated, and the British took the hill. But nonetheless, just the fact that they were able to put up such a fight proved to them that they could hang with the British. So these two battles, the first few skirmishes in the American Revolution, the battles of Lexington and Concord and the Battle of Bunker Hill showed that the United States might be able to survive this, or the colonists might be able to stave off the British and win their independence through revolution. And again, it's always easier to play defense in a war rather than offense. We've seen this in the Civil War, in which, despite the odds and the resources against them, the South was able to fend off the North for 4 years. We saw this in the Vietnam War, where, the United States, which was by far and away more powerful and more advanced and, had so many more resources than North Vietnam, because the North Vietnamese knew the terrain, because they used guerrilla warfare, for example, because they were playing defense. They just had to, fight long enough to get the Americans to get sick of warfare. That's exactly what they did, and they drove them out. This is exactly what happened in the American Revolution. All the United States, or I should say the colonists, all the Americans had to do was fight long enough to wear the British out. And that's simply what they did. It wasn't that they were more powerful at that point. They weren't. The British were far more powerful. But the United States, the colonists, the Americans, whatever you want to call them at this point, they were able to defend their territory. They knew the terrain. They participated in guerrilla warfare. They sort of broke the rules of conventional war. So these are the first two battles, and that concludes my first video today. I will get to the rest of the revolution in the next one. So I'll stop that at 10 minutes and then make another one. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.